This is the second video in a series on problem solving and decision making for the School of Business at Washburn University. In this video, I'll be talking about how to properly state the problem when trying to solve a problem or make a decision. In the book I referenced in the previous video, a quote from it says, "A good solution to a well-posed decision problem is almost always a smarter choice than an excellent solution to a poorly posed one." The goal here is to frame the problem correctly in order to get good alternatives to solve that problem. So the first step in stating the problem is ask what triggered the problem. Some important things about the trigger. First of all, it really impacts your assumption of what the decision problem is. We want to look at the triggering occasion because that can really influence the alternatives that we consider when solving the problem. And then we want to look at the connection between the trigger itself and the problem. Triggers can bias your thinking and can limit your scope. So an example I'd like to give you is this one, where your car breaks down. It breaks down on the side of the road. You have it towed to a mechanic who quoted you a price to fix it that's more than you can afford and is more than the car is worth if it were running. So if you paid all this money out to get it running again, the amount you had to pay out would be more than the value of the car itself. You need transportation to and from work, which is 2 miles from where you live, to and from school, 5 blocks from where you live, and for running errands. You currently have $1,200 that you could spend a day. So what is the triggering occasion? Well, the triggering occasion is that your car broke down on the side of the road. Based on the trigger, what might be the problem statement? So when this happens to people, commonly the problem statement becomes, how do I get my car fixed, or how do I replace my car? And the key here is that it's the car that needs fixed, or finding a new car. When in fact, a better problem statement would be, how can I get to and from work? How can I get to and from school? How can I run my errands and do the things I need to do and find the transportation to do that? By broadening that problem statement out, you open up a world of possible alternatives that you don't have if you just look at the car itself as the problem. So for example, well, maybe there's public transportation where you live and you can take a bus to and from work and to and from school, or you can call an Uber or a Lyft or take a bike in order to get around. So there's other options for transportation that you might want to consider. Also, well, maybe if you save up some more money, you can buy a better car than what you're currently driving that's more dependable, but you need some time to do that. And so these other forms of transportation might be a short-term solution to solving your transportation problem in an effort to improve your situation in the future. The next step in stating the problem is to include and sometimes question the constraints in the problem statement. And this is a modification to the PrOACT model, as I mentioned before in the previous video, that we make in order to make it more applicable to a business setting. So if I give you this example, go buy groceries. If you're told go buy groceries for dinner and don't spend more than $20, what are the constraints? Well, the first kind of obvious constraint is that $20 limit. So it's a number there and we can say we can't go over $20. It's pretty easy to see. But there's another constraint that's important. So the other constraint is that we're told to go buy groceries for dinner. Well, what other options are there for dinner? Because buying groceries isn't the problem. And it's really not the decision we have to make. The decision that we have to make, or the problem we need to solve, is that we need something to eat for dinner. And that could be takeout, it could be getting a pizza, going out to a restaurant, or it could be to go buy groceries. So if we state the problem more broadly, in other words, saying we have $20 to spend for dinner, or how should we spend this $20 for dinner, or even we just need to get dinner and maybe we go out to the freezer or dig in the refrigerator or go to our parents' house to have dinner that night. If we state the problem more broadly, we allow for more possible alternatives. The next step is to identify the essential elements of the problem. We need to understand what other decisions affect or will be affected by the decision. I'm going to give you an example of that here in a minute. The next step is to establish a sufficient but workable scope for your problem. And finally, get fresh insight by asking others how they see the situation. So the example I'm going to give you now is one that happened to me a few years ago. I like to call it the cold shower scenario. And what happened was that we moved to a new home about 3.5 years ago. And not long after our family of 4 moved into our new home, the complaints started coming. We all took showers in the morning, and if you were the last to take one, yours was cold. One morning, and this was a morning in which my wife had taken the last shower, she had had enough of the complaints and said, "It's time to get this fixed. We need a new water heater." So the trigger here was that people were complaining and people were having cold showers, and just one day enough was enough, and we needed to fix the cold shower problem. So what framed our original problem statement was the following information. The house that we had purchased had been built in 1981. A husband and wife had purchased it when it was first built and had been the only residence until we purchased it. So previously, the plumbing and the water heater and all those things that we need to take hot showers in the morning were based on 2 people, and now we had doubled that population in our house to 4 people. Their children had moved away from home prior to them purchasing the house, so it was just them. The hot water heater was much smaller than the one we had in our previous home, and 2 bathrooms had showers. The bathroom that my wife and I used had been remodeled since the house had been built. The bathroom that my kids used was all original. So our original problem statement was, what type of water heater should we purchase? So we had self-imposed a constraint there. We were going to buy a water heater. A better problem statement might have been, how can we produce enough hot water so that everyone can have a hot shower? So there's a time element to this problem that isn't reflected in the statement itself. But really we wanted everyone to have a hot shower in the morning, because as we went through alternatives such as, some people can shower at night and some people can shower in the morning, well, that really wasn't going to make everyone happy. We even said, some people go and work out during the day, they can shower then, and really that wasn't a good alternative either. So we had to start looking at a way to solve the time element of the problem, which is we needed to generate enough hot water in about an hour to an hour and a half time in the morning in order so that everyone could have a nice hot shower. So as I began researching different water heater types, I found out for some types of water heaters, such as tankless water heaters, you needed to know how many gallons per minute or how many gallons per hour you were going to need. So what I did is I went out and bought a 5-gallon bucket, and I went up to both showers and I turned on the shower and timed how long it took to fill the 5-gallon bucket. What I found out when I did that was that in my wife's and I newer bathroom, it had a low flow shower head in it. In my kids' bathroom, it had the old 1981 shower head, which pumped out over 5 gallons of water in a minute. So what we ended up just needing to do was changing out a shower head. And this was really beneficial for us, because if we had gone our original route of the water heater, it would have cost us about $1,500. And as I mentioned before, that would have affected other decisions, because we needed that $1,500 for other things, such as making car repairs or buying a new computer, updating a computer, or getting to go on a trip. Instead of using that $1,500 on the water heater, we could do other things with that money. And we ended up just buying a $30 shower head, and that actually solved our problem. So researching different water heater types and really researching the problem in general can give you a better perspective on how to solve the problem and how to correctly frame that problem. So here's another example for you. This is from an article in the Los Angeles Times in 2013. It said attendance for the top 20 major theme parks in North America has grown 7% from 2007 to 2012, according to estimates by AECOM, a Los Angeles engineering and consulting firm. Because of the growing crowds, theme park insiders say the average visitor has time for only 9 or 10 rides per day. This means a lot of time is spent standing in lines. Guest participations of long wait lines for rides decreases their satisfaction with the theme park and make it less likely for them to return. So what's the problem statement? When I presented this to classes in the past, a common problem statement is that lines are too long. How do we get the wait time in lines to be shorter? And in a way that could be the problem, but that's not the real problem. The real problem has to do with that last sentence in the example. Guest perceptions of long wait lines. So the length of the line itself is not a problem, or not necessarily the entire problem. Part of the problem is guest perceptions of long wait lines. So in order to solve this problem, a lot of theme parks, what they've gone to is engaging in staging as you go through the line to distract riders and to make that wait line seem shorter. So for example, at some theme parks, as you wait for a line, there's TV screens playing music videos or information videos, or there's activities that you can do while you wait in line in order to reduce the perception of a long wait. And then they've done other things as well, such as things like fast passes, where you can not stand in line and wait for a ride, but you show up at a specific time. And a lot of theme parks have actually monetized this, so you pay for the right not to wait in a long line. Another example is the Pepsi Challenge. Now, you may not have heard of the Pepsi Challenge, but in the early 1980s, the Pepsi Challenge was a big thing. Coca-Cola was losing market share to its competitors, including diet sodas and non-soda beverages. In a successful marketing campaign in the late 1970s and early 1980s, Pepsi demonstrated that consumers preferred the sweeter taste of Pepsi in blind taste tests. So at that time, Pepsi wasn't a very big competitor for Coca-Cola before this started. Pepsi was considered more of a regional cola rather than a nationwide cola. Pepsi's new marketing campaign was designed to infiltrate Coca-Cola's markets. The marketing campaign itself was known as the Pepsi Challenge, and here's a short clip showing one of the commercials and how the Pepsi Challenge worked.
You're about to take the Pepsi Challenge. You know, I have 2 bottles of cola back here, and you don't know which is which.
No, I don't.
We have never met before.
That's correct.
Right, okay. Except at my sister's wedding, you know. But beside that, we have never met. Okay, now I'm going to pick this up and tell me which one you chose.
Pepsi!
You know, in tests like these nationwide, more people prefer to taste the Pepsi over Coca-Cola.
Pepsi's much better.
It's delicious. It's down nice and smooth. The taste is good.
It's great. Take the Pepsi Challenge. Let your taste decide. Right, guys?
Right!
Coca-Cola's response to the Pepsi Challenge was somewhat interesting. This was a very successful ad campaign. So what Coca-Cola started doing was having their own secret test to try to show that some people preferred Coke to Pepsi, but generally, as with what you just saw, people chose Pepsi over Coke. And it didn't really have to do with the taste of Pepsi versus Coke overall. It had to do with the fact that Pepsi is a sweeter cola, and that first drink tastes more refreshing and just better. But as you continue to drink the cola, many people prefer the less sweet taste of Coca-Cola. So in the end, Coca-Cola made a critical error in determining what the problem was. They defined the problem statement as that they needed to figure out a way to change their formula to make it more popular and provide a better competition to Pepsi. The result of this flawed problem statement was New Coke. And this is New Coke. You might not have seen New Coke before because it only lasted for 79 days. It was an abject failure. People didn't like New Coke. People that had grown up drinking good old-fashioned Coca-Cola went out and protested it. They sent nasty letters and phone calls to Coca-Cola to object to New Coke replacing what they had grown up and loved. And less than 3 months after New Coke was introduced, Classic Coke was reintroduced, and New Coke was slowly taken out of the supermarkets and out of the stores. So this is the end of this module, and the next module has to do with defining the objectives for a problem.